Okay, welcome back to the channel. This is BTE TV, and I am Tony Jackson. We are here with Grady and Adam once again for more hagiography documents, and Adam is going to give us a great presentation. Before we begin, I just want everyone to pray for the people that are in the path of this storm. And it is we are on the eve of that storm right now, and I do have a bad feeling about this, but I think prayer can affect the outcome. So I want everyone watching this, please pray for all those who are in the path of this storm. God, please bless us all. And then I'm going to turn it over to Grady now. Grady?
Yeah, the more I've been praying on these hagiographies and seeking God, I think it's like the number one thing Satan's trying to shut down and snuff out: the history of the millennial reign, especially. Not just things like Tartaria and all, but it's like specifically Jesus, man, in all his glory, and the resurrected saints, what a glorious time it was. Satan will attack anything like this coming out. And it's like the biggest thing, even more than things like biblical cosmology, which we know Satan, like they snuff that out, that truth with the globe. But even this, even more so, it's like Satan will attack all history regarding the millennial reign, Satan being loosed specifically. It's a big deal, and really thankful for Adam. It's like a gift and a calling this guy has. I love it, man. Go, Adam, go.
Amen.
About the millennial reign. So some of these Bibles that were made during the reign are just pretty insane. Let's see here. Let's see if I can pull them in here. So that's a cover of a Bible, and I don't know if you can really see it, but it's like 3-dimensional, carved, and it's kind of just really gnarly.
That's crazy.
What's it made out of? Is that gold?
There are all kinds of different metals and jewels, and like that's so. This is allegedly from the Dark Ages and stuff. Like, give me a break. Look at that. How insane that looks.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's, now, like, I've done a lot of research into, like, I apologize for saying like and literally so much. I can't stand that I do that.
It's okay.
But anyways, I'm sure there's something more going on here than just aesthetics, But
it's built with a purpose.
And this is Palestine, covered in castles and palaces. That's kind of crazy too, especially when you think about, that location compared to this map, if that's even the correct location of where this actually was. But I just found that very interesting. It's just castles from one end to the other. So Delahi is like a famous name tied to hagiographies. He basically created, he wrote, I think it's the Golden Legend or the Legend of Hagiographies or something like that. But basically he developed the academic scrutiny process. It was connected to, later on in the document, I talk about the Devil's Advocate, the origin of Devil's Advocate. That was pretty shocking to me that was, we find that we have these sayings we say all the time, and then we find out the origins, but Devil's Advocate comes from hagiographies, and it was the person who basically got to say what got released, what got buried, what got destroyed. They claim it was for positive reasons, but, it was all started around the 1600s when all the other evil stuff started on the timeline, which seems to coincide with, evil's release. I don't know if he was released then or, if his influence, initially he had influence and then he was released. I don't know. But it seems like right around the 1500s is when everything started to switch, right? My basically when I've been doing this research, so I've been tying the accounts to the timeline. And even if we were to say that the subject matter, right, is questionable in every single hagiography, which is just not fathomable, right? Because then you're basically saying every Christian for during the 1,000 years and immediately after are all just liars and are exaggerators. I'm sure there were some, but all of them, that's a pretty bold claim. But I've pulled out so many gems just about the overall timeline of how these things develop, because you have your martyr accounts that are all martyrdom, torture type accounts up until around 500, the worst year in history. And right after that, overnight, they all changed to saints doing miracles, both living and dead saints doing miracles, angels showing up, Christ himself showing up in some cases, all in their glorified bodies. And then you have like these development stages. So you have basically centuries of hagiographies where it's basically they're establishing the church, basically, or establishing the reign or the rule of the saints. And, man will be man. We're fallible and we argue over things, right? And it was no different then. Even with the enemy locked up, man's nature is fallible, right? So, you have disagreements and stuff. But you can just see the timeline play out. And, the fact that the golden age of hagiography was exactly 1,000 years, that's very coincidental. And, for me, it just, it really solidified my faith, right? Because according to the narrative, Rome didn't die. It became the Catholic Church, and it was just a corrupt Catholic Church for that entire period of time till the Reformation saved the church, right? That's the official narrative. But that's not what the evidence shows. The evidence shows a steady, continuous civilization for 1,000 years that built structures that we couldn't replicate today if we tried. The entire earth is covered in infrastructure, just magnificent, beautiful architecture and stuff. And none of the stories are logical, the official narrative stories and stuff. And there's so many different things. Plus, for me, I don't consume entertainment, right? These, like, especially the martyrdom accounts. I mean, if those don't encourage your faith or encourage you to do better, right? I don't know what will, right? Because what many Christians, futurist Christians, think they are those special saints today. Right, they have this pride in them that they're going to get the mansions, they're going to get the rule over the nations, they're going to, be raptured or whatever they believe. But they think they're these special saints, and I mean, that is a very high bar.
Hardcore deception. Yeah, man, that is such a deception. This in this age is lacking the power of God. Like, it's doctrine and knowledge, and it's not the power of God in this age. So, wow, that is crazy if folks that think that.
So I'm going to go down like the different types and classifications, because there's different categories. Acts of the Martyrs, and that's divided into official acta, which is shorthand reports of the judicial proceedings against the martyr. These are considered the most historically reliable sources, like the Acta of Saint Cyprian. Many of the New Testament, many of the people that are encountered in Acts or healed, or many of the people in New Testament are in these hagiographies. Some of the Polycarp, I think Polycarp is probably one of the most famous, the one that we have the most copies of. I think it's up there in the top probably 3 to 5 hagiographies that we have copies of, and that was passed around. And then you have the other one for the Acts of Martyrs is the accounts of the eyewitnesses, called the Passions. Narratives written by Christians who witnessed the martyrdom or compiled details shortly after. Their reliability depends on the author's proximity to the events. Then you have the Vitae, which is the lives of the saints, biographies of confessors. So confessors are saints who weren't martyred. Martyrs are the ones that were killed for their faith, and then the confessors, which seems to be something that was during the reign period. That's when you're right after the year 500, around that period of time. Not every saint was martyred, but many of them were. But they're called confessors if they weren't martyred. The ascetics and the bishops. So the ascetics are the ones that are like the desert monks, right? The ones that go out and they're just fully isolated from humanity. And that's how they constantly talk about not being tempted by the woes of society and the busy life. And, there's many crazy stories with those ascetics too. All right. So it says these are generally less reliable than the Act of Martyrs because they are often written long after the saint's death and have a more pronounced edifying purpose. But a lot of the documents were rewritten. But when they go around to these geographic locations, like I said, they call it the cult of saints, which I believe they do that on purpose to get people to put a repulsive name or title on it. And it'll steal, it's the cult of saints, right? So they were a cult worshiping the saint. That's not what it was. It was just each geographic region had their local saint that they went to for whatever issue they had, whether marriage issues, they needed a doctor, a lawyer, they needed rain, or they needed a storm stopped or a fire stopped, they all went to their local saints, and then these stories would get passed along over time.
Wow.
The translations accounts of the moving of, so the accounts of moving a saint's relics. These often generate new miracle stories and are a key source for the spread of cults. So as like a bone or, some artifact that was attached to a saint, like something they bled on, something they were martyred with, or whatever it may be, something they connected to the saint or one of his bones or something like that. There's all these miracles attached to these relics. And even the most respected church fathers and theologians from the first centuries that, the modern church builds their corroborating evidence and basically the foundation, that we can know that our faith is true, right? Because there's all this corroborating evidence. And a lot of these teachers, theologians, and church fathers basically said you can't deny because they would see the miracles happening themselves. Eusebius, Augustine, and all those guys. And then you have the martyrologies, which is basically a calendar lists of martyrs' feast days. DeLahaye's analysis of the martyrologium is a masterclass in untangling textual layers and identifying original sources. Let's see here. DeLahaye provides a taxonomy of how legends are created. Literary amplification, the most common process. A simple historical fact is embellished with rhetorical flourishes, dialogues, and dramatic details to make it more inspiring. The influence of Scripture. Hagiographers often modeled their saints' lives on biblical figures, a saint's life mirroring the life of Christ or an apostle. This leads to topoi, or commonplaces. Every saint shows piety from childhood.
Okay, so quick question. DeLahaye is the one that is this one, some of the hagiographies that he put together?
So he's the one that basically created the process to academically and critically examine the texts, the validity of it, if there's any correlation between other texts, if it changed over time, that type of stuff. He basically created the whole academic process for analyzing.
Wow.
Okay,
and when did he do all that? Is he a good guy or bad guy? Good guy?
I don't know.
Okay.
His point was the official narrative is the Catholic Church was trying to fight against the Reformation, erasing the memory of the saints. Okay. So they wanted to get rid of anything that was too crazy, too non-logical, right? They wanted to get the most believable, most historically accurate accounts, right? And their claimed purpose was to go against the Protestant and to continue to honor the memory of the saints and what they did and when they were basically ruling. And
you're talking like 1500s.
Yeah.
Okay.
15 or 1600s.
Okay.
In that area. Well, DeLahaye is a more modern person, but I'm pretty sure, yeah, he's from the 1800s, I think, maybe.
1800s. Okay.
Yeah. But so he's the one who basically broke down all the stuff here. I might have the date on that wrong, but the Devil's Advocate stuff came into play in the Vatican secret archives they restricted access. That was all the 1600s. And let's see here. This is so a lot of it's like they claim it's pagan myths, local folklore, superstitions. They claim that it was Christianized. Noel was talking about that today. But let's see here. Says DeLahey argues that the historian's job is not to judge the possibility of a miracle, but determine whether the account of the miracle is historically credible. Right here, the devil's advocate prefigured DeLahey's entire method is an application of critical spirit that would later be formalized in the role of promoter fide. He systematically identifies reasons for doubt, anachronisms, geographical errors, dependence on earlier fictional models. Now, you also have to understand that they're going from the official narrative, right? And they're also going from, oh, well, that sounds too crazy. That couldn't be true, or that's not logical, or that's not possible. But even with that being the case, they still have accepted thousands of accounts where saints are levitating or flying or in two locations at once or glowing or whatever it may be, right? Resurrecting dozens of people and stuff like that, which is all non-logical if according to the official narrative.
Right. Wow. So they brought in this devil's advocate to kind of like try and debunk all of these hagiographies.
Yeah. Now, like I said, they claim it was for a good reason, but why would you call it the devil's advocate? You know what I mean? Like, there's a million other names you could have chose. But, so let's see here. He addresses many arguments that would be used later by reformers and Enlightenment critics, providing a Catholic scholarly response that acknowledges fraud and superstition while defending the core of the tradition. Let's see. Talks about dating. Go down to the... He's highly critical of like the Golden Legend and many of the more fantastical accounts. But like the Ball and Disc Project, they were connected to the Jesuits initially because the Jesuits were the ones tied into, changing the entire narrative of our entire world history, church history, and they were heavily involved in these hagiographies. But down in the later of this document, I talk about how they were using them for their own benefit. This is just a basic term of hagiography. The term,
real quick, the Bollanist,
yep.
Yeah, did they break off of the Jesuits?
Yes,
because of that, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So they split up, and they went in two different directions.
Right, and then they like faithfully had tons of guys full time, just
Yeah,
translating
so the Acta
these.
Sanctorum. So here, I talk about this later on in this thing, but basically, they're still not necessarily the good guys, because if you go to try to buy some of their modern translations, they're hundreds, thousands of dollars for the volumes, and they don't do it into English. It's always Latin or Greek. They just basically translate it into a modern version of it. So let's see here. So the term hagiography derives from the Greek hagios, holy, and graphein, to write, literally holy writing. Yet this etymological simplicity belies profound method. I can write better than I can read, I can tell you that. Complexity, as DeLahey demonstrated in the Legends of the Saints, 1905, the genre encompasses not a single form, but a vast ecosystem of texts: the martyrologies, the biographies, homilies, miracle collections, and all the ones I kind of just covered, and the apocalypses. Let's see here. So this is where I get into how many of these things have been destroyed. It's kind of crazy. So the surviving Byzantine hagiographic corpus represents perhaps 10 to 15% of what was originally produced. So we only have 10 to 15% of what was made during the reign, which is crazy. We can extrapolate from manuscript catalogs that between the 4th and 15th centuries, over 20,000 individual hagiographic compositions circulated in Greek, Latin, Syriac, and Coptic. And that's not just like an individual account that, that can be a whole collection of accounts or, from a geographical region, all the saints in that area or the hagiographies from that, all the characters connected to that region of the earth. So I found that pretty interesting, that we only have 10 to 15%. And right here I talk about where some of those went. So the Dumbarton Oaks one is the one I just finished. There's 347 distinct texts from 9 centuries, with the 4th to the 10th centuries accounting for almost 80%, right? So during that 1,000-year period is when you get about 80% of all your hagiographic saints accounts, which is, another coincidence, strange coincidence. There was this great lull between the 11th and 13th centuries. Let's see here, where it says the 4th to 10th centuries averaged 38 texts per century. The 11th to 13th centuries produced only 4.3 texts per century. This is a 90% reduction. So I don't know how the end of the reign went. Plus, with dating, it's so complicated with the dating because they could date something correctly on the real timeline, but you know what I mean? So say they dated the Crusades at 1100. That could have been actually 1100 on the real timeline, but on our timeline, it's like 300 or 400 years later if they added in those, or that's 300, 400 years off if they misdated the events. So it is very complicated on the dating because some things are dated on the fake timeline, some things are dated on the real timeline, right? And it's very complicated. And plus, we don't know if they added a century or two after the reign too, because they've made up full civilizations, entire civilizations that never existed, histories, and they repeated stories, fabricated evidence, right? So if they can make up centuries and full civilizations, it's very easy for to be plausible that they added a century or two after the reign too, or messed up the dating pretty severely.
Hey, Adam, what's an example of a civilization that they made up? Just for people that don't know what you're talking about, like what is
So Fomenko claims that either like you know how they say that like you had the Alexander the Great, went over and took over, right? And then you had the Ottoman Empire, and then you had the Napoleon Empire. And he claims, I don't want to misquote it or whatever. I don't remember exactly which one, but for sure he says these civilizations didn't exist. There's no basically they take the same, they'll change the names, but tell like it's a story that already happened in the past, and they'll just rewrite that. This guy named Scaliger is basically the guy who wrote most of our Roman history. And Anatoly Fomenko has like a 2,200 page book in the National Archives, and I don't want to misquote him which one it was, but basically these civilizations that allegedly rose up and fell and rose up and fell and rose up and fell during this period.
Oh, you cut out, Adam.
Oh man, I was getting a drink and now he cut out.
Yeah, like I know Napoleon, they say, was either made up or, they just kept reusing a Roman emperor, but they would change the name and they would call him Napoleon, and then, right?
Yeah.
And then
so,
100 years later, it was someone else.
Because the evidence is the stratigraphy, where they basically dig down through the rubble layers. It should show different civilizations, one after another, right? As you're digging down, you should find one civilization as it rises and falls, right? You can basically look through their trash and see how they develop, and then you'll see them fall, and then you'll see the next one start from scratch. But that's not what it shows. It shows one continuous civilization progressing during that 1,000-year period, which they call the Dark Ages. So right here, it talks about the 90% reduction in text. They call it the Battle of Manzikert in 1071. the loss of the Anatolian monastic heartlands, the Fourth Crusade. The Crusades destroyed most of the Holy Land. The Crusades are painted as this Christian, like, taking back the Holy Land, but in reality, they just destroyed everything. They destroyed all the shrines. They basically destroyed a lot of the evidence of the reign, I believe, and documents to go along with that. The rise of the Seljuks, displacement of the monastic communities, political fragmentation. Let's see here.
Do you think the Crusades could have also, like the Crusades that happened during the Millennial reign, was that you that said maybe they were guarding people, maybe they were going on their Feast of Tabernacle voyages?
Well, that's what they claim. And now there may have been people protecting pilgrims along the route, but from what I understand, they weren't good. They were, charging people. They're basically like a bank. They were doing usury. You could, at the start of your travels, you could deposit money in their bank or whatever, and then along your trip, you could stop at their banks if you needed to withdraw funds. But I'm assuming there was probably fees involved in that. Now, there may have been two different forces too, right? There may have been some sort of, because there's a lot of like holy saints that take over pagan areas. They spread Christianity, basically. How they tell us the story that around the Reformation time, the church spread out and spread civilized humanity, right? I think that is a mock version of what actually happened during the 1,000-year reign. I think that it spread very quickly across the earth, and any holdout areas that were not bending the knee or whatever, quite frequently they're defeated very easily with supernatural help, right? Stuff shows up in the sky, angels, saints will show up, Mary will show up, patriarchs will show up. There's a huge battle in Russia where Mary saved the whole city from the attackers or whatever. All right, so...
Wow, that's crazy.
So this is it organizes the saints into 6 functional categories. So you have the martyrs. This is like the timeline of hagiographies. You have the early period, which is the 2nd to 4th century, which is all your martyrdom accounts. This one mentions Polycarp of Smyrna, which is in the New Testament. The imperial period, which is 4th to 7th, standardized martyred templates, 60 martyrs of Jerusalem. You'll also find that a lot of these martyrdom accounts, it seems like right after the year 500, people had time to sit down and start like writing about what happened, right? So they start telling all these stories about the martyrs. And if that timeline is stretched out, right, because according to the official narrative, Christians were being tortured brutally and martyred for centuries, right? From the 1st century all the way to the 5th century, they were being martyred. Well, if that timeline really is stretched out, that puts those martyrs into a much shorter, like decades-long time period versus centuries. And it makes it make a lot more sense, right? Because, if they think these promises are coming and you're just watching centuries of Christians just get slaughtered and no promises are being fulfilled, you know what I mean? Is that going to really instill faith in people to keep, because there's mothers that send their kids to be martyred. And that's the thing I argue with futurists. I'm like, do you think a mother is going to encourage her kids to not give up their faith and be chopped to pieces or burned to death right in front of them? Or if the promise is in 2,000 years, the mother's probably going to be like, hey, I'm not going to denounce my faith. I'm going to be martyred, but you guys go live your life, right? Most mothers are probably going to do that. But they believed those promises were coming soon, and I believe they did come soon.
Yeah, I think it's a clear change of history. I mean, they faked the history timeline. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's so hard to like I said, all I know is that I don't know nothing. There was a few things that Noel said that I really, connect with. One of the things is I do a lot of my own research. I have the luxury of time that I understand not everybody has. Right? I have the lack of human connection, and I have the lack of physical ability to really do anything else. So I prefer to just do the research myself, but in terms of figuring out our past, I think it's important because, we have to be able to answer questions when we bring up the short season, right? I have all this evidence. Many of us have gathered evidence about the events that happened with the temple. It was destroyed for 3.5 years. The supernatural armies in the clouds. The Christians were led up out of the city. The Shekinah glory left the temple, went to the Mount of Olives. You show them those types of things. You show them the melted stone structures. You show them the sun went dark for 18 months. So you show them all these events in history that perfectly match up. And then when it comes to the millennial reign, they're like, oh, well, there'd be evidence. Well, I believe there is evidence, right? There is, it's a fact. There is evidence of it. Now, you don't have to believe it, right? But for me, it really solidifies my faith, right? And my autistic intellect is not just constantly assassinating my spirit with logic and contradictions and all these different questions anymore. I have a peace now I never even thought possible in my faith. I mean, the things that I don't have figured out are not that important, I guess, in the sense of like my faith and believing that my faith is true, and I'm not putting my faith in some man-made nonsense, right? But I'll just keep going here.
Yeah, no, that's right. You have a calling, Adam. It's a gift and it's a calling from God, and it's awesome.
And just for clarity, it goes against everything in my nature to be like public and social, and it really like. I don't know how there's some people that really love the attention. They love being like, that's not me.
Yeah.
But the Father's made it clear I don't really have a choice in the matter. We all have our pieces of the puzzle. I don't have all the pieces, right? There's many pieces of the puzzle that other people have put together, and I've learned from them, and it's given me a better picture. I've connected dots. And that was another thing that Noel said. We have to come together, and we have to stop being so emotionally connected to our previous or our present conception of reality, right? So we have these, it can't be that. It can't be, America couldn't be the Holy Land, right? Do you really know, right? Geographically speaking, we don't know, right? We do not know. Mountains were moved out of their place. If we believe these things happened, mountains were moved out of their place. The whole earth was flooded at once, So there's these massive traumatic geological events that have happened multiple times to creation. So we really don't know for certain. We can have a good idea, we can find the evidence, but so many people get emotionally connected and then they just attack. Oh, I can't believe that person. Throw out everything else that person says because you don't agree with one thing. And that pride, I think, is going to come back to bite people on Judgment Day, because I do believe that the Father is going to have more mercy on people because of the level of deception we've been under. The catch is going to be, we will have to have had that same mercy, grace, long-suffering with our fellow man, right? We're going to have mirrored that same grace. Otherwise, because it says, judge not lest you be judged, right? And we will be judged according to how we judge. We'll be forgiven according to how we forgive. And we all make mistakes. I am about as far from perfect as you could possibly get. I'm a fallible man. He saved me from a lot of darkness in my life. And many people take what I'm saying to them, especially on X, where they'll be bringing up a subject or something, and I'll try to get them to be intellectually honest. And then they get angry. And I'm just like, whatever topic is they're talking about, I'm like, that's not even the important part. I'm just encouraging humility. Right?
Yes.
I'm encouraging humility, especially for truther Christians, because it seems like every deception they crawl out from under, they build a mountain, right? They're on top of their mountain. And as soon as they crawl out from underneath, I got it all figured out now, and you don't, right? And if you don't believe exactly what I believe, and I mean, it's just, we have to love each other, and we are repulsive to people that are looking from the outside in. Nobody wants to be a part of that if we're just constantly like eating each other, alive, right? And that's one of my main
amen.
messages.
Huge amen.
Yep. And I just want to say that even I've done videos about things like I did a video on the Great Wall of China, and I came out and said, I do believe this was a road to the blessed land. I don't think it was a wall at all. I don't think it was a defensive structure at all. And then 2 weeks later, Guy Anderson came into my channel, and I just said, Guy, what do you think of that? And he gave his opinion, and I didn't argue because we neither of us really know, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit there and say, "Oh, Guy said it was the wall to defend the Tartarians used it to defend against the Chinese." I don't agree with him, but I am not attached to anything that I put out on my channel. I always tell people, if anyone tells you they know exactly what's going on and they know exactly where we are, they're lying to you.
Yeah.
You have to accept that we just don't know, but we're putting the most plausible scenarios out there based on the evidence that we're finding. That's all we're doing.
Yeah.
And this hagiography is a huge part of it because this is in writing. These are documented by the Catholic Church, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Grady.
Yeah, amen. And the big thing is the pride. The pride is such a problem. I'm working on a video right now, 50 characteristics of the Pharisees. Jesus warns us to beware of the leaven of the Pharisees. And man, it's so important that it's humble ourselves. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. So you think that the Chinese wall is this? He thinks it's this. Okay. And you put it on the altar, and it's interesting takes, just humble yourself like a child. It's so important to all of this.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, man.
All right, you guys ready to
Yes.
go on a little bit more here? So now we're getting to the Jesuit thing. All right, so in the Ball and Disc project, the Jesuit origins 1583 to 1773. The Societas Bollandistrum, Bollandist Society, was founded in 1583 by Jesuit Jean Bolland, with the explicit mission of collecting, editing, and publishing / destroying, hiding the Acta Sanctorum. That's another one. That one's in Latin. I've been trying to translate it with AI, like doing 2 AIs to try to, get a better idea. I don't really trust AI at all anymore because it's just straight lies to you now. But anyways, the Acta Sanctorum, one volume has 1,300 pages, and they started these volumes, like I said, in like the 1600s. So there's 20, 30, 40 volumes of these things that are, hundreds, if not thousands of pages long. It's just crazy how many there are. Let's see here. This is what I was talking about earlier. The Counter-Reformation necessity. Post-Tridentine Catholicism required authoritative, cleaned-up saintly narratives to counter Protestant critiques of superstition. Scholarly rig. Bolland pioneered source criticism, distinguished authentic from legendary material, identifying textual families, establishing chronological layers. Here's what we get into the access control. For 200 years, 1583 to 1773, the Bollandists monopolized hagiographic scholarship. Their work was expensive, multi-volume, and it still is today. There's a couple organizations that are still doing it, the Bollandists, and I forget what the other one was, the two biggest ones. And I mean, it's hundreds, if not thousands of dollars if you want to buy the volumes that they've translated. And they don't even put them into like easy modern day language. They just translate it into like a modern form of Greek or Latin or whatever it might be. Latin only, excluding vernacular readers and Orthodox, just the same way that when the enemy took over the church and, he took all the different, because I told you last time that there were scriptures in all these different languages, right? It wasn't just Latin, but when the enemy got out, it seems like he clamped down on what was out there and was only allowing it in Latin so the common people couldn't have the word again. But they did the same thing with hagiographies. They kept them in languages that most people can't read or won't be able to translate. DeLahaye's work embodies this tension, while his Legends of the Saints is methodologically revolutionary. It remained institutionally conservative. The Bollandists preserved but also controlled access to manuscripts. They were critical of legend while defending the cult of saints. Like I said, a lot of these people were using these things. They couldn't erase them completely. They destroyed 80 to 90% of them, but they could not. Same thing with scripture. They could not destroy it all. So what did they do? They took it and they used it for their own gain when the enemy got out, whether it was to get the monies there. I forget what it's called, but where the Catholic Church was getting monies from, like you could pay to, pay for your father's, or you could give money to the church to pay for your dead father's sins to get him out of purgatory or whatever it may be. So they would use that to, boost their geographic region or their church or their bishops or whatever. Let's see here. Three developments in the 19th century, democratized access, the suppression of the Jesuits, 1773 to 1814. Temporary dissolution forced the Bollandists to seek public funding, making their work more widely available. The patristic revival. Scholars like Krumbacher, 1897, and DeLahey created critical methodologies accessible to secular academia. The Corpus Christi, that's the one I was talking about that charges hundreds, if not thousands of dollars there. This one here, Corpus Christianum. Let's see here. Modern access battles. Recent digital projects have accelerated access. The Dumbarton Oaks one, that's the one I just put on my Saint spreadsheet, which you can find if you go to my X page there, XB, or at BEULERDAM. It's the first post. In the comments is the Saints thing, and it's right in the research thing for the short season. Thesaurus Linguae Grace contains most published Greek hagiography. Mount Athos, that's actually, from what I understand, the heart of hagiographies. You got the Vatican Secret Archives, which still remains restricted. It was created around the 1500s. I think it's directly tied to... they claim that they created that because there was damning things against the church or something like that, but I think it was more damning to the official narrative that they were telling, right? And because, centuries of these accounts basically showing that the saints were doing exactly what Scripture said they would do, ruling over nations. Some saints had bigger geographic regions than others. Some had more power than others. You know what I mean? Some would, like I said last time, there was one that healed testicles and hernias and that type of stuff. But they dealt with everything. There was one account there. I'll try to pull it up here, but he did everything you could possibly. All of the satanic systems we have today, like the medical, judicial, government, all these different industries and power structures. He fulfilled all of those roles. His account, it's just one saint doing everything from marriage counselor to weatherman. Let's see here. There's the iconoclastic purge, 726 to 843. The systematic destruction of hagiography by iconoclast emperors. It represents the most successful censorship campaign. The life of Stephen the Younger documents how iconodule texts were burned and their authors executed. Let's see here. The Fourth Crusade's sack of Constantinople destroyed an estimated 70% of the city's manuscript collections. While not deliberate suppression, this represents cultural catastrophe that permanently warped the historical record. Let's see.
Wow.
Yeah, modern conspiracy. So, this is what I was talking about, the Reformation. So, John Calvin said that was saint veneration as idolatry and the miracles as satanic deceptions. That's pretty bold. That's borderline blaspheming the Holy Spirit if you're wrong. And that's another thing I encourage people. You don't have to believe these accounts, but I don't think it's going to look good if you get to Judgment Day and you get questioned on, you may not say a word out loud or publicly, but if you are judging these saints and accusing them, their miracles, of being from Satan. I, as special as these saints were to Christ and what they did and the faith that they showed, and I would encourage humility again, right?
Right.
Always go back to that.
Yeah.
I would be careful about ascribing things to Satan that you do not know for certain are of Satan, right? Martin Luther called the Golden Legend a book of lies that corrupted the pure gospel faith, Let's see. Protestant rejection of the saints erased 1,000 years of Christian memory from Western consciousness. Voltaire mocked the Bollandists as grave robbers of history. Historical Pyrrhonism. D. Hume's arguments against miracles targeted hagiographic credibility. I think those are like non-Christian academics. There's tons of non-Christian academics that have picked these things apart, mocked them, belittled them, called people stupid for believing them and calling them all liars and exaggerators.
And then on top of that, you have the Christians. Also, you had Martin Luther and John Calvin.
Yep.
Just debunking it, trying to debunk it and change history. And man.
Let's see. And this is another crazy thing. So before the Reformation and during like the 1,000-year period, they had calendars where pretty much every single day of the year was a feast day for a saint. This is during the Dark Ages, mind you. Every single day they're having feasts for saints on the calendar. This is well documented. That, to me, during the Dark Ages, right? Feasts and Dark Ages, to me, those two, I can't reconcile. You're having daily feasts, in the Dark Ages? Okay. But anyway, so pre-Reformation England, there was 140 feast days required as religious observance. Post-Reformation reduced to 27 statutory holidays, only 8 were saint-related. Destruction of relics. 90 to 95% of English saint relics were destroyed between 1536 and 1540. Manuscript loss. 70% of English monastic libraries were dispersed or destroyed. So clearly there's been a systematic destruction of these things, just like the structures. Right? They couldn't destroy all the structures, but if you look at what cities used to look like just a few centuries ago to what they look like now, they have erased a large portion, and it's wars and great fires and, all the different, traditional fake narratives they say. Let's see. Henry VIII, he seized $1.2 billion in modern money in monastic lands when he was going after, how all these buildings are named after saints. These saints, according to the accounts, were building these little churches, chapels, all these different healing centers and all this other stuff. Well, when they went up against the Catholic Church, he basically seized all their lands and all those churches and everything else. Yeah, this is where the Catholic corruption was, where they were selling prayers to saints merged in popular protests. Indulgences, that's the word I was looking for. Relic trade, the legitimate translation of relics was portrayed as simony. Miracle faking, e.g. the cross of St. Andrew, because there's a ton of accounts that claim to be the real cross. Some of them are allegedly legit, but there was a lot of fakes, too, that were going around, You could see some fraud doing that, right? Taking a piece of wood and being like, oh, this was the cross, right? So I'll sell it to you for, or whatever. I'll charge you to come see it or touch it or whatever.
This is amazing. You see all this attempt to discredit the hagiographies. This through the last few centuries. This is telling.
By the 18th century, Protestant Europe had institutionally forgotten its hagiographic heritage. Germany, only 15% of medieval saints retained in Lutheran calendars. The Netherlands, complete erasure of native Dutch saints. England, Cranmar's liturgical reforms in 1549. Again, it's always in the 1600s there. eliminated 90% of saint commemorations. America, the Puritan inheritance. So America, it just meant zero institutional memory. So when they came over here, right, to the Puritans and all this stuff, they forgot about their past. And I think that was intentional. Whether the Puritans like John Wesley and all these guys, whether or not they were in on it, I don't know. But there are books written about the fact that they believed the same thing that the Mormons did, right? Because the Mormons, you got to imagine, if you come across Salt Lake City, I don't know if you've seen that city and the structures and the tabernacle, they are some of the most insane buildings and structures from that period of time, right? So you come across that, you're going to be like, oh, we missed the golden age, clearly, right? It's full of gold probably and riches and everything else. And same thing with, I'm starting to think that many of these New England preachers and pilgrims and Puritans found these cities built because they all believed they were starting the millennial reign. When they came to America, they thought that it was the New Jerusalem, the Holy Land, the Promised Land. And it makes sense. If they came and they found all these structures, everything was built up like that, coming from wherever they were coming from. It makes sense that they thought they were, oh, we get many mansions. Here they are. We found them. And, but that's the trick. Satan has created a church on pride and a false history narrative. And clearly we are not the promised land. Clearly this nation is not the jewel of the Father's eye, right? Because, anybody who has eyes or ears can see that. All right. So.
Yeah, Adam, that is so telling. That is so crazy. I love how you're laying out kind of the history of this and how all the attempts everywhere to destroy these hagiographies, man.
So it says the 11th to 13th century disruptions erase dating information. So here's the name duplication. I had talked to you guys, I don't know if it was privately or publicly. Noel talks about some saints and some characters that keep showing up, right? Same name, same personality, same. Basically, it seems like it's the same person, but the official narrative would say it can't be because that person lived a century or 4 centuries ago. So what they'll say is it's either somebody with the same name or a copycat, or glorified saints just showed up throughout the millennial reign and it was the same person doing the same things with the same character or whatever it may be. Because the people in these accounts, like modern translators will be like, oh, they had a vision or a dream or a hallucination, but the people in the accounts, they claim that these people were showing up, whether it was an archangel, a saint, Christ himself showing up. There's one I was reading that this sailor got stranded by himself out in the ocean. Christ shows up. I think Mary shows up. One of the archangels shows up. They take his boat back to shore. And, there's all kinds of accounts like that. But the accounts basically read as if the saints were showing up. Yeah, so miracles were demonic deception. There's a lot of, like, the holy relics and images and stuff. The Orthodox Church is really big on images. Now, modern Christianity will say, oh, you're not supposed to create any sort of, we're not supposed to create any image, right, of God, and it's idol worship. But these structures are just completely covered in massive, beautiful paintings of, like, historical events, saints, all this different stuff. So I don't know if we have a pure perspective on that. I think our perspective may have been tainted, because people will attack the Catholic Church. Like I said, the Catholic Church has corrupted a lot. But like I said, there was only one church for the enemy to usurp when he usurped, and he usurped it very quickly and corrupted it very quickly.
Yeah, man, that makes so much. Everything is so inverted. Wow.
Yeah.
Adam, I want to ask you a question. The halos that we see on all the paintings and on the stained glass in the churches, the halos around the saints, Are there accounts, and I thought I heard there are accounts of them, of the saints actually glowing when they performed miracles.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
some saints just were glowing all the time. Others would start glowing when they were praying. Uh, yeah, so the glowing thing, they claim it's like an artistic representation of their holiness. But if
Right.
you look, they're from South America to Africa to Europe. Anywhere you go and you find these paintings, sometimes in these dilapidated caves or old church buildings, they're all painted identical when they're like hundreds, if not thousands of miles apart. You know what I mean? I find it very hard to believe that they're all doing the exact same artistic representation,
Right.
or the logical thing or they were glowing. Like there's so many accounts of them glowing. That's one of the most common
Right.
features or characteristics of these saints.
Yeah, there's many important people that were painted and they had statues made, and they're not glowing. Why is it just the saints that are depicted as glowing? Why isn't it, just anyone who was important or anyone who did good things? So it's
And
obvious that it was a literal.
and that's why I have this theory. I haven't developed it too much, but the little bit I have dug into it, there is some grounds that it could be true. So if you go look in the Asian areas, right, in Asia, you'll find these so-called Buddhist saints, right? Because if you look up just hagiographies, oddly enough, there's all these hagiographies about these Buddhist saints, right? They're painted exactly the same way with the halos and everything else. So I'm wondering, my theory is that these were actually saints. And like I said last time, I think the Rain Church was much more colorful and complex than we understand today, right? Because we have 50,000 denominations, so it's colorful. But each denomination claims that their color is the only color that it should be, right? Whereas during the Rain period, it seems like it was, it's not what the future is painted out to be. Most of what we think about when we think of the 1,000 years reign has been developed in the last 3 centuries. Most of what you picture in your head has been developed in the last 3 centuries by various futurist prophecy teachers and stuff. And it looks like it was a lot different, right? Because they paint it as this perfect utopia. That's not what Scripture says. It says he's going to rule with an iron rod. That doesn't sound like that. That sounds like somebody's going to need the iron rod, right? Because you don't need to rule with one if people don't need it. And people, like I said, are fallible. Even if the enemy is locked up, we are fallible, and we've always rebelled. And we've always, and I'm sure there are people, it says that people don't bend the knee are going to face, droughts or whatever it may be. So these are actual snippets with the original language here, and they're just basically quotes, people defending saints, right? And just to point out, the people that were really going hard against the Christians venerating these saints and their remains or their relics or their shrines or whatever, it was pagans, primarily pagans that were doing all the attacking. And these people are writing quite frequently to these pagan as a response. So we do not worship the martyrs, but we honor them as true worshipers of God. We do not revere human beings, but we admire those who in times of trial have rightly worshipped God. We lay them to rest in beautiful tombs and raise magnificent houses of their repose, so that we may emulate the honors of those who have died well. And we do not show zeal towards them without reward, but we enjoy their protection before God. For since our own prayer is not enough to propitiate God in the times of need or calamity, for our supplication is not an entreaty, but a reminder of our sins. For this reason we resort to our fellow servants, beloved by the Master, so that they, by their own merits, may remedy our transgressions. Now, the modern church will attack this, right? You can we just go straight to Jesus. You don't need to have a saint. Well, you better not ask. If you're making that statement, you better not be a hypocrite in asking anybody to pray for you ever, right? Because that's what you're doing. And an old timer once told me, you don't just ask anybody to pray for you. You find the most holy, righteous, dedicated, pious person you can find to pray for you, because that's going to give you your best odds of the prayer being answered quickly and you know what I mean, in the way that you just having your prayer answered, right? You want to go to the most, right? Because the prayers of a righteous man availeth much. Says, what then is the accusation? That by honoring the martyrs we ourselves strive to please God? What blame is there in taking recourse to advocates? Let us now examine your case as well, whether you, the accuser, are free from this charge. It's funny, I just said that. And how could that be when you do not honor the myriads of dead men, but worship them as gods? The key points are, we honor the martyrs as true worshippers of God, not as objects of worship themselves. That one's got the flying squirrels in it. Yeah, these Eunomians seem to have been attacking Christianity. They were tied to the flying squirrels. It says, as for you, flying squirrels of the new disobedience, Eunomians, sorry about my reading and pronunciation. What a surprise is it that you dishonor the martyrs, since you overturn Christ and separate him from his likeness with the Father by your own words, and keep away from the places where the holy bodies rest, as if they were profane. But if you cannot realize what is happening, then fear the fact that although you are called Christians, you join the pagans in hating martyrs. Don't you know that Christ is the chief martyr who first suffered and passed on the zeal of martyrdom to his servants? And after him, Stephen, the champion of excellence in accordance with God, as his name means Stephen, crown, all the disciples and apostles that followed in sequel. Consider how many you dishonor by one insult. John the Baptist, James known as the brother of the Lord, Peter, Paul, Thomas. I name these as leaders of the martyrs. Then the endless host of those who died for the sake of the life. Is it for you a petty matter that you offend these figures? Is the danger of their hostility small? Each one of them has defeated the devil and a horde of demons. He has been enumerated among the angels and is now preserved as an excellent athlete for the awakening of the resurrection, and he will be attending at the epiphany of our God and Savior, opening his mouth with freedom, rejoicing in the view of the angels and in the glory of God, and blessing his own fortune of the fetters, torments, and beneficial death, for it has become for him the cause of endless life. Now when you hear these things, I know what you will think and say. Quote, I can achieve equal rewards too, if I live in virtue. I shall be no worse or no less honored than those who are presently admired. But these are plainly the words of a self-righteous, arrogant, like the haughty Pharisee. Luke 18:11. Words alien from any kind of humility. And yet it is known to all that no person who has not humbled themselves will ever rise up to height. For this is a decision of the Lord. But let us concede to you that you will become so. Don't you wish, tell me, to pay some respect to those who have opened the way of piety for you, the guides of good things, the teachers of virtue, those who have educated you in perseverance and overlooking death? Learn what gratitude is from students in this life, for although they become like teachers and lack nothing in skill, yet they love the hearts of their teachers and revere them, praise them, cede them seniority, and tend them like fathers. Definitely a passionate response to, because you can read, there's letters that go back and forth between the pagans, the flying squirrels, and other people that were attacking. These are like very early on documents in the first few centuries. It says, even after their deaths, the saints have great power. This is demonstrated by reference to the Old Testament accounts of Elijah. A dead man who was placed in the tomb of the prophet rose and joined his relatives, showing the grace and power of the dead righteous man and his remains. 2 Kings 13:20-21. God honors the righteous with miracles at their tombs in order to excite zeal for virtue among the living. Joseph transfers the remains of Jacob out of Egypt, Genesis 50:1-14. After his own death, Joseph's remains are taken by the flying squirrels out of Egypt and carry them as a means of protection, Exodus 13:19. His sarcophagus is revered no less than the Ark of the Covenant. David invokes Joseph in the Psalms, propitiating God and masking, as it were, the sins of the people by the invocation of the merits of the righteous man. The same ideas can be recognized in the story of Abraham requesting from God the sparing of the people of Sodom for the sake of the righteous, Genesis 18:16-13. A righteous man is a great asset for humanity, a source of protection bequeathed from generation to generation, unaffected by time and adversities. The Israelites were rescued from slavery and the consequences of their infidelity thanks to Abram. God reveals himself to Moses as the God of his fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Exodus 3:6-16. When the Israelites commit the sin of idolatry, Moses propitiates God by invoking the righteousness of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And God wishes to punish Solomon for his sins, but spares him for the sake of his righteous father David, 1 Kings 11:11-12. So those are all examples, right? Because they will attack asking a saint, right, to intercede on your behalf, right? Because they're right there with Christ. Christ says, ask the Father, make your relationship with these saints the same as our relationship is, right, between Christ and the Father. And, it's scriptural that they talk about all the time that a righteous man, the people that are within proximity to them, geographically speaking or community-wise, if there's a righteous man and everybody else is pagan and antichrist, that righteous man will bring benefit and blessings to that area around them. It's just, that's scriptural. You guys have any questions? I don't know how's it going so far. My reading is not great, but
no, good. I mean, this is all it's fascinating, and I'm very interested in it. But do you have I'm just
you want to hear
some of the actual like stories of some of the things the saints did, because this is now, Adam, this is something that people can. Is this something people can download? What you just read?
That one right there. I don't know if I added that one to the spreadsheet, but everything else is on the spreadsheet. The breakdown of hagiographies, all the scriptures that talk any scripture that's related to the saints, what their role is going to be, what they're going to do, and their relationship to Christ and all that stuff. That's all on there. I will add this to the spreadsheet. Tonight. And
I know that's like you're kind of setting it up to show how this was attacked. But if we could get into some of the the fascinating actual accounts of the miracles they did, that would be great.
All right, so this is a really long one. I won't read them all. I'll just kind of read the headlines. Remember, I was saying that they were fulfilling all these different roles for their geographical regions. So this is the Coptic life of Pacenthios, ascetic. So that means he's like a hermit, or stays away from civilization, and Bishop of Coptos. About the year 632. So this would have been post. This would have been in the beginning, I'm assuming, of the reign. Attributed to his disciple John the Presbyter, and presented on his feast day of 7 July, mentioning his exceptional humility as a monk and bishop, his ability to perform miracles in life, his healing power, as well as his ability to converse and intercede on the behalf of the dead. Let me just see what they say here. It says this is a paper manuscript in the British Museum. So this particular manuscript, so the events were in 600, but this manuscript itself was reproduced from other documents in 1006, according to this. And it was produced by the monks of the monastery of Saint Mercurios, the general on the mountain of Edfu, for their monastery. And this is the other thing on the spreadsheet. When you click on these accounts for this Oxford website, and you go to there'll be this is the evidence, right? So this will be the original language. It'll show you all the original language. It'll show you the translation and a little like a narrator's perspective. And then you click on this discussion thing, and it'll give you a breakdown of what type it is, the evidence, any discrepancies or arguments. But the best part is you come down here to this further reading part, and just for this one account, you have this book, this book, this book. Like, you have all these extra additional sources that you can go and find that are connected to this saint or whatever it may be, or this geographical region or whatever.
Where can you find those books? Like
these?
Can you go to like a used
for
bookstore? And
a lot of the older ones are in the National Archives. You can find them.
Okay.
Not all of them are in English, but they will be in a modern version of some language, so you can actually use AI to translate it fairly easy. Some of the museums you can actually translate it. They let you translate it right there. They have like a feature you can translate it, but most of them you can get for free in the National Archives. The more like the newer ones, you're probably going to only find excerpts because of copyright issues and stuff like that. But like I said, some of these come up with like 10 to 15 additional sources that you can dig into whatever it is. All right, so this one, a lot of these are like, a lot of the accounts are basically their feast day, and what they would do is they'd read all the different miracles for that saint at the feast. Let's see. It says, this text recounts the saint's numerous miracles performed as an ascetic living in the desert. He is described as being luminous, right, and full of sweet odor day and night. So there you go. There's right at the first one we read, talking about him glowing, basically.
Mm-hmm.
The speaker addresses both saint and audience and explains that he had sworn an oath not to speak of the miracles that occurred through the saint until long after his death due to the saint's humility. And that's what I was telling you about. That happens a lot. The account begins with the monk Pacentios, who had the habit of praying exceedingly, reciting numerous holy books by heart. The first miracle occurred to the saint himself when he fell ill and stayed in his cell unattended and without provisions for over a week. He received a divine visit from the prophet Elijah, the Tishbite, who sat with him. One of the other ascetics who eventually arrived to look for Pacentios found him with the prophet, whom he described as an utterly hairy being. That's interesting. Yet graceful and full of light. When he was told that this was the prophet Elijah, he was sworn to secrecy about the miraculous visit paid to the Pacentios, at least for the duration of the saint's lifetime. Pacentios is referred to as the 13th apostle, and after he was made bishop of Coptos by the archbishop of Appa Dominios, it is claimed that he acted as protector not just of the district of Coptos, but of the entire country of Orthodox Christians. See this, you would read this over and over again, where they're protecting a geographical region, just like Scripture says. Some protect, like this one is clearly a more important one. He got more responsibility. While he was here, right, he handled his talents properly, and he was rewarded with more responsibility. Let's see. So he has, I'm going to read the titles of the miracles because there's a lot of them. And then if you want me to read whatever specific one, then just I'll read those. So we got the fish miracle, the miracle at the well, the water miracle in the desert, punishing
Yep. What did a therapist call it? A therapist.
Okay. Staying safe from wild animals on dark desert roads, pregnancy out of wedlock, the sign of the cross on a pregnant ewe appears on her lamb, casting out a demon, miracle of the jealous husband, the saint acting as a marriage counselor, intervening in a financial crisis, uncovering fraud and murder, the miracle of the serpent's death, the saint's death, the healing of two women through a contact relic of the saint. Let's see. the death of the presbyter whose spittle landed on a cherub during service, the laments of a mummy invoking the saint for intercession. Actually, that's the one. That's why I saved it, because this mummy basically came back to life.
I want to read all of those. Like that's wow. But let me just ask you a question. I remember, you know, that book, I think it's called the Codex, and it's this giant book, and it's got a picture of like the devil inside of it, a very colorful, like, and this book is massive. It's like, I think it's like 4 feet like long by like 3 feet
Oh, the
wide.
Giants books, you mean? Like the giant people
It's like
books?
the Codex Giganus or something. And they said, they said that the story behind it was that there was a monk who was in prison, and they gave him a choice: either write this book in one night, or when you wake up tomorrow, you'll be executed. And they said it was impossible. There's no way that one man could have created this book by himself. The writing is flawless, like all the script. There's no mistakes. Everything is perfectly straight. It's got inscriptions and illustrations. And when I first heard that, I went, that's total BS. Obviously it's a story. But now, and that was, 5-10 years ago when I heard about that book and how it was supposedly written. But now I'm wondering if that was a saint who actually did create this massive, complex book in a jail cell in one night. Are there any accounts of that happening? Like a saint writing a book like that? Or I bet that was a saint, and I bet that story is real. It's not just a myth.
There's a lot of stories. Like this guy was an ascetic, right? And it talked about him being in the desert in his little lonely cell away from humanity, right? To stay pious and stay humble, so he wouldn't be tempted by all the things that are in society, right? And there's quite frequently crazy stuff happens, and they get visitors, and I can't think of anything specific off the top of my head about
I'll look into that
but
for next time. And then the other thing, before I forget, that first thing you read, it said he was visited by a man that he described as being utterly hairy.
Yeah.
But what can we go back to that? That was a very strange description, right? Like,
yep. So it says that it was Elijah of Tishbite. It was the prophet Elijah the Tishbite.
But then it says one of the other ascetics who eventually arrived.
Yep.
So that wasn't Elijah. That was someone else, right? One of the other. What's an ascetic?
That's another like a monk, a desert monk saint. So that's the ascetic is like that's a type of class.
And it doesn't say hairy man. It says hairy being.
Yeah. So we can actually.
I wonder if that's like Sasquatch or something.
So the cool thing about this site, it does have the original language. Now, these are all translated by professionals, but if you're like curious about a word or anything else, you can take it and you can throw it into a couple of AIs and ask for like a word for word translation, and just to see if the translators maybe put it in a different, worded it differently. But that does seem like a pretty specific description of hairy.
Utterly. It says utterly hairy being, not just kind of hairy or a little hairy. Well, it sounds like he was covered in hair. Okay. Anyway.
So like I said, this is one of the greatest, great examples. Like you saw the wide variety of miracles that are ascribed to him, right? Whether he does there's all kinds of these, they're carrying on the same apostolic or the New Testament acts, right? Where they're feeding people, bringing water, providing whatever the people need. Like this fish miracle, when one of the brothers at the mountain of Scent was very ill and desired to eat a bit of fish, Pesenthios, on his way to fill his bucket with water from the river, prayed to God to have mercy on this very ill brother and not to deny him his wish. When Pesenthios reached the river bank, the floodwater was so high that it had transported a large fish onto the bank. Pesenthios thanked the Lord, collected the fish, and gave it to his ailing brother. The account of the events, it is claimed, was given to John, the encomiast, presenting the saint's life. So basically a second-hand person to the miracle. Someone connected to it wrote it down.
Adam, when you read these, can you highlight them?
Yep.
Like just so, because the text is so, yeah, exactly. Just so people can follow along.
I don't know if I can make it bigger or not. But maybe I can zoom in a little bit. Is that better?
You might be able to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Better.
You might
Okay.
be able to hit the plus. Yeah.
All right, so the miracle at the well. Another time with Pacentios had, their names are so hard to read, had forgotten to bring a rope and bucket to the well where he intended to draw drinking water to fill his container. He said a prayer, whereupon the water rose to the rim of the well, from where the saint could easily fill his container, before he ordered it to go down again. When Pacentios prayed with his hand stretched up to heaven, his 10 fingers shone like torches. Here's the glowing thing again. His 10 fingers shone like torches, so that it was mistaken for a fire lit by the saint, as one eyewitness claimed. Other eyewitnesses claimed that they found the famous monk hiding on the mountain of Gemme, not wishing to become a bishop, but rather to remain a simple ascetic. The Encomion presented seems to make use of material from sermons by Pacentios himself, arguing that the encomiast would otherwise not be able to do the saint justice. Let's see. We'll stay away from that one. All right. See, like I said, some of these are just seem like they're mundane, but when you really think about it, there's thousands of these people just having complete command and control over nature, over people, over demons, over like the material world, you know what I mean? And let's see. Once when John was sent by the saint on an errand to the region of Gemme, he returned late and caught in the dark on the desert route. 2 hyenas chased him, riding his donkey, ready to attack him. In his despair, John prayed to the saint, and immediately upon hearing the saint's name, the wild animals fled in terror. Next, John was attacked by a pack of wolves and separated from his donkey. He prayed to the saint again, and immediately, when the wolves heard his name, they ran off. When John reached his home on the mountain of Scent, he found the donkey had already returned. Sorry, I wasn't highlighting it. Pacentios scolded John, claiming that he had told him before not to travel on those paths in the dark, warning that the wild animals would have killed him if it were not for the mercy of God. Yeah, they have also a supernatural, like burglary. Like if someone steals something, they know who stole it. Like this pregnancy out of wedlock, he knew who got the person. He informed the father of his son's secret affair with the local girl who became pregnant and forced them to get married. Casting out a demon. When approached to cast out a powerful demon from a young man who had suffered for 7 years, the saint asked John to bring him some water from the monastery. John went and received the water from the altar of the shrine and delivered it to the saint. The saint then dipped his finger into the water and made the sign of the cross on the youth. He then gave some water to the father of the patient and instructed him to administer it to his son. If he would drink it, God would heal him. The encomiast explains at this point that the saint did not want to drive out the demon by himself so as to avoid praise. Like, that's a common theme. They do everything they do, like, you know, where it says don't pray on the street corner, don't, you know, if you do a good deed, don't go around telling everybody you did it.
Yeah.
Like, these guys were, you can't get a higher bar than these guys because they were just constantly saying, hey, you know, because they know that man is fallible, right? Someone does a miracle for you, you're going to want to worship that man. We see it in the truther groups all the time, right? They leave one authority and then they make somebody else their authority. They really won't do their own research. Whatever that person says is law. You know, whatever that social group says or steers them, they'll just emotionally connect to it or whatever. So I understand, but these guys were quite frequently, you know, trying to make sure that nobody was worshiping them. Right, so the whole excuse about idol worship and saint worship and all that stuff is, according to these accounts, is just nonsense.
Adam, can you just talk about, like, how did these saints get to be saints? Are these are different than the resurrected believers
some of
that
these
reigned with Christ, right?
So some of these are resurrected saints. Like that one I was just reading you, like the first half of those miracles were before he died, and then the other miracles were after he died. So miracles that happened post death. And so there are, like, in terms of the saints, the Catholic Church has their like thing where they decide if somebody gets sainthood or whatever it may be. But like Noel was saying, like the saints, specifically the ones that were martyred, but then there were saints that weren't that didn't get martyred, that also were given roles, it seems, in the millennial reign. And like I said, it's very hard to tell because they'll say, oh, this can't be the same person because they were martyred, right? Or it is the same person and they were doing all the miracles post martyrdom. Because there are writings that people that write about hagiographies that basically say saints' real miracle life didn't kick off until after they died, which I found very interesting. And there's multiple people that make that claim. Let's see.
That one you were just on was crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
he was killed 3 times and resurrected 3 times, and then it says, did he like cast Satan away? That one was crazy. And then the other one, to finish up, the guy gave the water to his son drank it and was healed. And he the reason why he did it that way is because he didn't want the credit. I love that.
I wanted to talk about these tongueless Africans. Let's see. There's a whole bunch of them. E3599.
Tongueless? Wow.
Where's it go? What did I say that was? E3599.
I've heard so many interesting things just in the past 2 weeks, probably more than I've ever heard in my whole life since we started getting into this, right?
Yeah.
Like the smoke is going to start coming out of my ears if I hear any more of this. Like, I can't believe all this stuff is so hard to find. It's so important. Well, I guess I can, because we know they're trying to erase the proof that the Bible's real, and that God was, that Jesus was so important to this world, but
right. It is so crazy. And I love how you laid out how systematically they discredited all these hagiographies. I love how you laid that out like that, Adam. All the attempts to discredit and destroy all of these.
Somewhere where I could still see it.
And it makes sense, man. It makes sense that they would pose the Catholic Church. It's like all of it, there's so much deception.
So this is, I chose this one because there's a whole bunch of them. But these are they were called the African confessors, who their tongues were all cut out by the Vandals, yet they basically could still talk and communicate. Let's see what the discussion says. Marcellinus was an imperial official at Constantinople under the emperors Anastasius, Justin, and Justinian. The epithet comes in his official rank. He came originally from the province of Dardania in the Western Balkans and wrote in Latin. His chronicle was a continuation of the Chronicle of Jerome, covering the events from the 370s to 518. It was subsequently updated to 534 by Marcellus himself and to 548 by an anonymous continuator. Marcellus dates events by indictions, the 15-year tax cycle used in the later Roman Empire, and by the consuls of each year. The story of the African confessors whose tongues were cut out during Huneric's persecution in 484, but who were afterwards miraculously still able to speak, is attested in multiple sources from the late 5th to 6th centuries. There are considerable variations between the accounts, but apart from the miracle itself, they have the common element that one or more of the confessors traveled to Constantinople, where the miracle was observed by numerous witnesses. These guys are written about all these accounts over here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know how many. There's like 10 of them. They're all different accounts from different locations. People, like, many of them are, well-known church figures from church history that met these people or met somebody who met them, who verified that they could speak without tongues, which is, that's a miracle. And it's the timing of it too, right? Because they were persecuted right before the worst year in history, and then right afterwards, they're out there doing miracles. And
so they may have been resurrected saints.
Yeah.
They're called confessors, so technically that means they weren't martyred. They weren't actually killed. So it seems like not every saint was martyred during that period of time. A lot of them were.
Yeah, like those that were raptured,
So,
yeah.
But many of them were tortured, maimed, and whatever, and they still, like these guys. It says the earliest account, Victor of Vita, written shortly after the event, states that many people were able to speak after their tongues were cut out, one of whom, a subdeacon named Reparatus, traveled to Constantinople, where, according to Victor, he was living at the time of the writing as an honored guest of the Emperor Zeno. Marcellinus, writing 30 or more years later, gives the miracle in two forms. First, he relates that Huneric ordered the tongue to be cut out from a Catholic youth who had been dumb from birth, thus making a double miracle when he immediately began to speak by praising God. That kind of gave me goosebumps right there. Then Marcellus claims that himself had seen multiple very religious men at Constantinople speaking with a normal voice, even though their tongues had been cut out. The claim to having witnessed the miracle is one which appears elsewhere, but never in such emphatic and seemingly unambiguous terms as Marcellinus I saw. And then it gives you the language. The relatively vague language used by Procopius in the History of Wars and Justinian in a law issued after the reconquest of Africa does not amount to a claim to have seen him personally, while the claim to have examined the mouths of the confessors, which appears in a work by Anus of Gaza, is made by a fictive participant in a philosophical dialogue. So there's, even if some of these accounts are hearsay or whatever, you have people that actually witnessed the miracle. You have all these like big names in church history all connected to it. There's tons of accounts that connected to these guys. Like, you can just brush it off, right, and not believe it, but people are speaking without tongues, right? They may not be slaying a dragon, but they're speaking without tongues, right? And that one kid was actually, had some sort of mental health issues along with, getting his tongue cut out, and he became completely, intelligent and able to speak after. And there's just so many of these. It's crazy. It really blew me away, like the sheer volume of these things, and then you got like this, there's a lot of Catholic sites that will put their saints up, but I mean, A to Z, right? This is just A. All right, A to C to D to E.
And this is just the Catholic ones. There's a whole volumes of tons of others, right?
Yeah. So, and some of these are post-release, and that's another thing. It seems like during the transition, there was still people that were able to do miracles, but it didn't take long after the Protestant Reformation for people to completely forget And the thing is, we like most people that have like truthers understand that, you know, words matter, thoughts matter, like all of these vibration, the frequencies, all these different things, intentions, they influence the spiritual realm around us. So when you convince the church that these miracles are not possible, right, that the supernatural, and while simultaneously they're convincing the people that are not in the church that supernatural doesn't exist at all.
Yeah.
Right. So the consciousness of the church forgets about the power that we have access to, right? Because if we believe that the New Jerusalem and Christ and the saints are somehow connected to this realm that we're living in, well connected to heaven, that means the ether connects us directly to them, right? That's why I'm so confident in my prayers now. I always knew there was something supernatural going on where, you know, if like somebody I would just pop into my heart and then I would pray for them or I'd talk to them and then I'd find out there was a reason for that, right? Because we can send prayers on the ether. I don't know exactly how it works, but the supernatural realm somehow travels and interacts on that etheric supernatural realm, the spirit and stuff. So you convince the church that doesn't exist, miracles don't exist, your faith by default loses its power, right? Because we have not, because we ask not, and we receive not, because what? We believe not.
Yep.
So you convince the church these things aren't possible, they're all lies. That's what the church is. And look at us now. We've consented century after century to evil systems, right? We put our vote for the lesser of two evils, right? Instead of like understand, you know, we don't believe anymore. And,
yeah, man. It's hit me like a ton of bricks, what you've been trying to say over the last week. It's just like, so you had one universal church during the millennial reign because Jesus and the resurrected saints were ruling and reigning with Christ. And then Satan's loosed. He inverts it, calls it Catholic, okay, and makes them evil, the bad guys, makes the Protestants the good guys by destroying the evil bad guys, which were all these hagiographies. It was the Protestants that destroyed these.
Yep.
And
the Catholics also destroyed some, right? And they picked and choose what was going to benefit them, and they tried to use those to try to benefit them, give them power, wealth, money, right? So on both sides, right? The enemy, that's what I'm saying, that there's no heroes within the church in the short season. There's no church, denomination, creed, whatever, that has any ground to have pride in their position, their finite understanding. It's humility, right?
That's right.
They're not real Catholic. The people in the Catholic Church now, I mean, like the Vatican, the Pope, those aren't real. They're not Catholics at all, right?
It's become well, you could say the same thing about the how many ever, because you say 40,000, but when I did my research, it seems like we're going to hit 50,000 denominations by like the end of 2026, which is crazy. That means 50,000 groups of believers have so much pride in their finite understanding that they are willing to separate themselves and create an entire new denomination based on their pride in their finite understanding. I mean, that's deception.
Let me just get this straight. Before Satan was released, the Catholic Church, you're saying they were real Christians. They were, right? They weren't always the bad guys. They were
right.
Really, so
it's inverted.
It's inverted. It's like they're playing 5D chess. Like Grady was saying, they made everyone think like, and we're thinking like we're exposing the Catholic Church for being evil, and really we're pushing that narrative. We're helping to erase the importance and the significance of the real Catholic Church, right? That existed before the little season began.
Yep. And I don't know if it was called the Catholic Church then.
Yeah.
They've made it. They've turned it into the Catholic Church.
And and
they didn't let anybody read the Bible. They didn't let only the priest could read the Bible. And they were killing people, these Protestant guys for trying to get the Bible out there. They faked all that history, made the Catholics look like the bad guys, and then destroyed all the hagiographies.
Yeah. And then just made Christians go to war with each other, nation against nation. And it's all like 99% of the time, these wars in the last 5 centuries, Christians are by far the highest casualty rate, both sides, civilian and military. But yeah, everything's inverted, right? The Dark Ages is the age of light. The Enlightening is the darkening. The Reformation is the deformation, right? It's like everything we've been told. Now, I do believe that some of the people during the Reformation were on the right side of this war, and they were martyred, right? Those ones were martyred. The ones that were going along with whatever the enemy's narrative, that he let them run. Because that's how, like, controlled op is controlled op. And the enemy's agents, that was one thing I wanted to mention too. A lot of people are like, oh, they're a shill, right? They're a shill, right? And like that first of all, like shill is a very specific term, right? Because you don't even have to be a part of the club to be a shill. Because a shill is just someone who's really trying to get some sort of financial gain. You have various types of infiltrators. I worked for the government in multiple capacities, right? I know exactly how their tactics. And they have different types of infiltrators. They have ones that'll go in and they'll be right parallel with everything the group believes, right? And everything they do is perfectly lockstep with the group. But whenever a specific subject or a specific person or a specific topic comes around that they need that trust, they're going to take advantage of that trust that they've earned within the group, and they'll steer them on this one subject, but they'll still appear like they're in lockstep with the group. But nobody will really notice because they'll have already gained that trust. Then they have people that are going and just all they do is cause division, cause doubt, get people to backbite or gossip or betray trust or, just cause confusion. And so you have multiple types, and then you have teams, right? And you'll have your handler, you'll have the lead person, and then if that lead person, their trust is not enough to sway the group, they'll have 2 or 3 little minions in the group that'll back their plant, right? So there's different levels of infiltrators. There's different roles. And, some of them are sleeper agents. They will sit there and they will be on page or on lockstep with everything you believe in the group. Never go against anything. Seem like they're perfectly on board. But in that moment later on, whenever that critical moment comes along, and, I think that's what's going on with like Answers in Genesis, for example.
Yep.
I've been going hard on them, all their different guys, and Kent Hovind, the dinosaur guy. I've been going hard on them on X, in love, because, if we can just get one of those big names to open up to biblical cosmology, if we can get one, right? Because that's where it starts, biblical cosmology. And then once someone realizes that they are able, the whole of humanity in the church it's capable for them to be deceived on that level for centuries, including great theologians, right? All these different respected church leaders and teachers and seminary founders and everything else. Once someone realizes that that's possible, it then opens their mind to start asking questions. So when they see a news person or a politician tell them something, instead of just believing it, right, they question it and they'll open their eyes. And hopefully eventually it'll lead them to biblical eschatology, because that's what I'm calling the short season now. It's biblical cosmology because it's from the scripture, right? Biblical eschatology takes the word exactly as it says. We don't have to twist it to fit timelines. We don't have to twist it to fit man's science or man's history or anything. We can just trust it. Even the parts that we haven't found the evidence for or we're not certain about, we've found enough evidence at this point. Now, I would love to just believe scripture and not have to question it, but my autistic intelligence doesn't allow me to just have peace. I have to find the answers to shut it up, right? To keep it up, to keep it quiet. And we have found enough evidence.
Test all things, prove all things. That's what you're doing.
And we have found enough evidence, so.
Yeah, it's staring us right in the face with all these Capitol buildings, the millennial reign.
Yeah. I think this might be do you think this is a good place to stop and continue maybe tomorrow? Or, I mean, how much do you have it in you to continue? I don't know how much longer you want to go, but I don't know.
How long have we been going?
2 hours.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm game to do it again tomorrow.
All right.
Yeah.
Whatever
And
you
I'm
guys
game
wanna
to
do.
go for more hours too. So it's up to
Yeah.
you.
I honestly, I don't think I can.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think I can. But I like though that we keep it a little short because
Yep.
it's easier to kind of compile these and put them out as because to make people sit through like 3.5 hours, then we have to cut it. And I like,
According to my buddy there from Phone Booth Podcast, he's been running that for years now. He said that anything over like 2.5 hours, he
Yep.
says it's pointless because most people are not going to actually watch the last part
Yep.
of it.
yeah,
And it's
you
hard to edit.
yeah, and you said what you just ended with, I think, is a perfect summary of, you know what I mean, of this segment. Like, and what you said, that didn't even occur to me really. Like, I was like, when you said it the first time, last time, I was like, what's he talking about? But you just said it about how they painted the Catholic Church, intentionally painted them as bad guys to make us disregard everything the Catholic Church has ever done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're
it's
these
pride.
evil.
That's like 5D chess,
Yeah.
right?
So
Yeah.
great. They're killing everybody trying to make Bibles. They're trying to make Bibles and then the Catholic Church is killing them. And the Catholic the priests.
Yes,
Only
yes.
the priests could have the Bible. And so they're killing all the Protestants and Martin Luther and his and all that stuff. Stories.
Makes so much sense. And I just want to read this verse. This is Matthew 17:20, and it says, he replied, because you have so little faith. Truly, I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you.
There's actually an account. I don't know how many. I feel like there's more than one, but I know one for certain where there was some sort of saint or a bishop or whatever, and there was a mountain blocking the view of the town or the church or whatever it was, and he prayed, and God moved the mountain for whatever purpose. I don't remember exactly what the purpose was, but there are actual accounts where they moved mountains.
And
Wow.
that's amazing. And also tonight, we may have uncovered more, evidence ties to what we now refer to as Sasquatch being mentioned in this hagiography. We'll have to look into that more, but
Yep.
It
says he was a prophet, Elijah. Now, I don't know if I'm going to have to look Elijah the Tishbite, if that's the Elijah, because Elijah and Enoch, I can't say for certain, but I'm about as certain as I possibly could be that they were the two witnesses, based on what I told you last time. The fact that they are the fact that there's more mentioned pilgrimages and lead medallions and all this other stuff, inscriptions relating to them over Mary. That's a huge deal.
Yeah.
And, I don't think it's a coincidence that it was Enoch and Elijah, the two people that, from the Old Testament. All right. So.
Yeah. So game on tomorrow.
Yeah.
If I have power.
Okay. Lord willing.
So
we'll
So
pray
good.
that we all have power.
Yes. And then tomorrow, I like how today's kind of started with the history of the hagiographies. And that was like the light bulb went off for both of us, Tony.
Yeah.
And then we got to some hagiographies. Next time we'll just hagiography out from the word go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to lay the foundations for everybody to understand the subject, how we got here. You know what I mean? Because people are like, oh, the hagiography hoax. I heard that. I still hear it today.
I do
the
too.
hagiography hoax. And I'm just like, do a Google search and take 30 seconds and you will find 500 books on hagiography written from all different angles, from all different perspectives, for all different reasons. It's just like, yeah. I mean, it is. And they have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of these things, right? There's tens of thousands that have been translated, right? And then there's hundreds of thousands in storage. Keep in mind, that's only 10 to 15% of what existed. According to the statistics, there was 90% more than that. out there that
So
was destroyed.
crazy. That is so crazy.
And you saw from the intro that I put on the last video we did, it's mainstream accepted by even the mainstream. CNN said that nun, her
Yeah.
body was perfectly preserved. Like
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
did,
And the reason, explain the reason why you shared those. It was just because it was mainstream people sharing it.
right. It was
Yeah.
the last one was that woman was from the History Channel
Yeah.
talking about a saint who flew up in the air, grabbed a giant wooden cross, and drove it into the ground to help them finish building the church. Like that's like something from that Superman would do.
Yeah.
And this is the History Channel admitting that this saint, right, this
Yep.
follower of our heavenly Father, was endowed with the power to fly and lift a massive giant wooden cross and place it in the ground. And this was on the History Channel. So they're saying it, and that's why I showed that. It's like this isn't stuff that you have to dig that deep to find.
Yeah, that Paulsalkis lady, I think is it Anna Paulsalkis? I can't remember. She's written a few books. She's the one that I got the quote from. She said that every atheist that goes into the Vatican tunnels for research comes out a believer. They may not be a Christian, but nobody leaves those tunnels not believing in the supernatural. So there is something down there so convincing that atheists leave agnostic at the very minimum.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, let's pick this up tomorrow.
All right.
I'm not even going to say, thank you, goodbye, because this is just we're just going to take a pause, really, for a night.
Yeah, man.
Collect our thoughts because this is such amazing stuff. So, guys, thank you, Adam. Again, thank you, Grady. Thank you. But we're not done here. We have a long way to go.
Yep. We
And,
have like tens of thousands of more to read.
Yeah, we'll be here for 5 years. So
Yep.
we'll all have white hair by the time we're done. And to everyone watching, thank you guys. Stick around for more. And just prayers for the people in the path of the storm. Once again, I think prayer can influence outcome. It's done it before. That hurricane that was headed for Florida, I think it was a couple of years ago. A bunch of Christians got together and prayed, and poof, the storm just disappeared. It never reached land. So prayer is a lot more powerful than people think. So, guys, let's all pray that the storm is not as bad as they're saying it is. Any final words, Adam?
No, I'm just I'm thankful that you guys the Father's given you guys an excitement about these. It's encouraged me because it's there have been a handful of people that have reached out and on X and other places that have found this very helpful, right? And yeah, so I'm just thankful that the Father is using me in some way, and I'm thankful that He gave you guys a heart to encourage me to keep doing this, and that there's other people that are. It's basically I have a peace and a joy and a hope about my faith and the future that I've never had, and I know not everybody has that. Waking up is traumatic. Everything that's going on in the world, not knowing what's coming in the future with all the psyops and everything else. So if I can share anything that will pass along that peace, that joy, and that hope, I'm glad to do it.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you,
That's
Adam.
all I have to say. Amen.
All right. Well, guys, thank you. And people watching, thank you. Love you all. God bless you all. And good night.
Love you guys.